Who or what was the leaping, fire-breathing, devil-like creature known as Spring-Heeled Jack, who terrified the British population for more than 60 years during the 19th century? He started at first as a rumour after sightings by people crossing Barnes Common in southwest London. The alarming figure would emerge from the night mists in huge bounds, flying through the air. But reports persisted until the sinister, frightening bogeyman was confirmed by shocking personal encounters starting in 1837. Were his vivid descriptions just an exaggeration of some 19th century superstitious people, or was this individual a genuine person? The following are 6 accounts of people who were confronted by this bizarre, half-human, half-beast. Number 6. Mary Stevens. A servant girl called Mary Stevens was walking from her parents' home in Battersea in southwest London, across Clapham Common to her place of work in Lavender Hill, when the frightening creature leapt on her, gripping her so tightly that she could not move, kissing her face, tearing her clothes and groping her with his claws, which she described as cold and clammy, as those of a corpse. When Mary screamed in terror, her attacker quickly disappeared, and some locals who were alerted were unable to find him. However, the next day saw another attack near Mary's house, where Spring-Heeled Jack commenced what was to become a signature destructive act. He leapt in front of a passing carriage, causing it to crash and badly injuring the coachman. Several witnesses watched as he fled the scene by jumping over a 9-foot-high wall, uttering sounds of high-pitched, babbling laughter. Number 5. Jane Alsop. Jane was a teenage girl living with her father and 2 sisters in Bearhind Lane in Bow, East London. One night she answered violent knocking at the door to find a man calling himself a policeman and requesting a light, as they had caught Spring-Heeled Jack in the lane. Jane had been sceptical of reports of Spring-Heeled Jack, but now excitedly thought that the stories must be true after all, and that she would be witnessing his capture. When she brought a candle, she noticed that the so-called policeman was wearing a large cloak, which, as she handed the candle over, he flung off, grabbing her by the neck and pinning her head under his arm. The man ripped at her dress and body, and as she screamed and managed to get away, chased her, caught her in the hair and clawed at her face and neck. One of Jane's sisters ran into the street and raised the alarm, at which Jack soared away into the darkness. Jane later described her attacker as having a most hideous and frightful appearance, vomiting blue and white flames from his mouth, while his eyes resembled red balls of fire. She said he wore a kind of helmet, a skin-tight white costume like an oilskin, and had large metallic claws. Number 4. Lucy Scales. 8 days later, Lucy Scales, aged 18, and her sister were walking home along Lonely Green Dragon Alley in the East End of London after a visit to their brother, a reputable Limehouse butcher. The sisters observed a tall, cloaked figure standing in an alcove who leapt out and spurted large blue flames into Lucy's face, permanently blinding her and causing her seizures, which continued for several hours. Their brother, hearing the screams, came to help and was told that the assailant was tall, thin, of gentlemanly appearance and carrying a small bullseye lantern similar to those used by police. He had walked quickly away after the attack. Number 3. Public condemnation. Soon after the first few incidents, the Lord Mayor of London, Sir John Cowan, received an anonymous letter from a complainant who signed themselves a resident of Peckham. The writer of the letter claimed that a group of young aristocrats had made a bet with a mischievous and foolhardy companion, daring him to disguise himself as variously a ghost, bear or devil, and visit the homes of villagers around London for the purpose of harassing and terrifying them. In particular, the writer pointed out servant girls had been targeted. 2 of them had become permanently disabled and a burden on their families. The letter writer also expressed disgust for the newspapers of the day, which seemed complicit by remaining silent on the issue of Spring Hill Jack for whatever cynical motive. The Lord Mayor made a half-hearted response to the letter, calling Jack's pranks a pantomime display, but instructing the police to make a concerted search for the perpetrator and offering rewards for his capture. Sightings became more frequent around Kensington, Hammersmith, Ealing, Stockwell, Brixton, Camberwell, Vauxhall, Lewisham and Blackheath. Spring Hill Jack was sometimes dressed as a ghost or wearing a bear skin, but concerningly, people were being seriously harmed, wounded by the metallic claws, experiencing disabling fits and panic attacks, and some even dying of fright. Finally, there was extensive press coverage of the 2 recent attacks, and the public became more aware of the potential danger. Sightings of Spring Hill Jack were regularly reported in the following years, always with descriptions of the high leaping, the flaming breath, and eyes of hell. During the 1840s to 1860s, Jack was seen all over England, particularly in the Midlands. His notoriety may even have led to copycat offences, with sightings in Northamptonshire, East Anglia and Devon, and attacks on coach drivers becoming common. Number 2. Aldershot Barracks. In 1877, Spring Hill Jack began terrorising soldiers stationed at Aldershot and later Colchester Barracks. One night, a sentry on duty at the North Camp issued a challenge to a sinister figure advancing towards him. The intruder ignored him but proceeded to slap him several times on the face with an icy hand, then disappear into the darkness with astonishing bounds, the soldier shooting at him without success. The attacks at the barracks continued, with at times the assailant springing onto the roofs of the sentry boxes. He would then simply laugh and melt away into the night. Panic spread amongst the ranks, and the sentries were ordered to shoot him on sight if he was seen, but immediately after the order, the attacks ceased. In the same year, Spring Hill Jack, wearing a sheepskin, was cornered by an angry mob in Lincoln and fired on, again with no effect. He escaped the crowd by leaping into the air and again disappearing. Number 1. Suspects. In March 1838, immediately after the attack on Jane Alsop, Thomas Milbank was heard boasting in the Morgan's Arms public house that he was Spring Hill Jack. He was arrested and tried at Lambeth Street Court, with the evidence of a greatcoat and white overalls he had worn, as well as the candle he had dropped. However, the charge did not stick when Jane Alsop insisted that her attacker had breathed fire, which he claimed not to do, and Milbank escaped conviction. In July 1847, a Spring Hill Jack investigation was held in Teignmouth, Devon. It led to a Captain Finch being accused and convicted of 2 charges of assault against women, when he was said to have been disguised in a skin coat, skull cap, horns and mask. A prime suspect at one stage was a young Irish nobleman who was living in London from the start of the first attacks. The Marquis of Waterford was notorious at the time for his hatred of women and authority, engaging in drunken brawls and doing anything for a bet, earning him the title the Mad Marquis. In 1880, he was named by author and researcher E. Cobham Brewer as Spring Hill Jack because of his propensity for playing practical jokes and scaring people, carrying out pranks which others would copy. However, the Marquis was never thought to be a vicious person, and in 1842 he married and settled in County Waterford in Ireland, leading a quiet life and dying in a horse riding accident in 1859. Meanwhile, sightings of Spring Hill Jack continued. Perversely, Spring Hill Jack had become a kind of folk hero. his exploits now reported compulsively in the press, and the subject of penny dreadfuls, popular serial fictions and cheap theatrical plays. Jack's activities moved to the northwest of England, where he was seen on the rooftop of a church in Everton, near Liverpool. His Eyes of Hell were last seen in 1904, 67 years after the first sighting in Barnes. Again in Everton, he started a panic one night by bounding up and down the streets, leaping from cobbles to rooftops and back. When some of the braver observers attempted to corner him, he vanished into the darkness. Theories about Springhall Jack's identity abound, including ideas of a paranormal or extraterrestrial origin. For example, it is known that his jumps would have broken the ankles of a human who attempted them, and bullets did not seem to affect him. He was described as having a hideous face with eyes like balls of fire, and vomited blue and white flames, leading some to call him a demon summoned to the world by occult followers to create chaos. Whoever or whatever Springhall Jack was, at least rest assured that he is no more.